Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellie and today's video is going to be my May reading wrap up. I read a total of 13 books I think it was, and it wasn't the best month of books, but anyway, here is what I read in May. I started the month with God of Malice by Irene again and I gave it 4 stars. This is a dark romance that's set in like a university for mafia children. This is the story of Glyndon and Killian. So there's this island that's off the coast of the UK and there's these 2 rival schools for the super rich and, like I said, the mafia children, and Glyndon and Killian go to each of the schools and the schools don't really mix. They have this huge rivalry between them, and at one school most of the students are from the UK and the other school most of the students are from the US. As this is a dark romance, we have the main character Killian, who is a psychopath, and Glyndon, and there's a lot of like dub con in this. He kind of forces her into a lot of things, but she does enjoy it, and I don't really know how to explain this without giving too much away or getting this video taken down because it's a dark romance. But if you like morally grey characters, then definitely check this one out. Obviously check the trigger warnings first, but Killian is definitely a very morally grey man. His character was equal parts interesting and disturbing, but honestly I just didn't really connect with the characters. Like, I enjoyed the story, but there was just something missing, and I am going to continue the series. I don't know when, but I feel like I could like some of the other characters that are mentioned in the first book that are obviously going to have their own books as the series goes on. Like, I feel I could like some of those couples more than Killian and Glyndon, so I'm definitely intrigued enough to continue the series. This just wasn't my favourite. Then I read Things We Left Behind by Lucy Scott. This is the 3rd and final book in the Knock 'Em Out series. I have just been needing to get this series off the TBR, so I'm finally so excited to have it done that I did give this 4 stars. This was my most anticipated book in the series. I loved the first book when I read it 2-3 years ago, and then at the end of last year I think it was, I read the second book and I really didn't like it. So I was really hoping that I was going to enjoy this one because I loved Lucian and Sloane, the 2 main characters in this book in the previous books, and I thought this was going to be filled with all the tropes that I was really going to love, and I did like it, but it's just my same feelings towards the first 2 in the series, that I felt these books were just way longer than they actually needed to be. But Sloane is a librarian and Lucian is like this businessman, but I don't really know how to describe what he does. But when they were teenagers, they lived next door and something happens and they basically just hate each other now, and they're both part of the same friendship group, and their friends have kind of had enough of having to keep them apart or not invite both of them to things because they always end up arguing, and their friends are basically just like, you have to get along. They try to put behind them what had happened in the past so that they could move forwards for their friends. You could tell the whole way through that there was obviously feelings and chemistry there, even though they didn't want to act on them, and you could tell that even though they really tried to hate and be mean to each other, that they actually really did care. I just really liked their relationship. I think although I gave the first book in the series 5 stars, Lucian and Sloane are definitely my favourite couple in the series. Then I read my first arc of the month, and that was Putting Down Roots by Jenna Rogers, and this was another 4-star read. This was a cute small town no spice romance. We have Olivia, who is living out in San Francisco. She has this job, I think it's in a law firm, but she is really burnt out, and she has lived with anxiety in the past and everything's just got too much to her, to the point that her company have said she needs to take a break and they're going to give her some paid time off so she can kind of recuperate, so that she can then come back and, you know, be a better version of herself. So her parents had moved from California to this small town, I think it was in Texas, stay with them in this small town, and nothing's meant to be permanent, it's just so that she can have a break. But then she meets Rhett, so he is a friend of her parents. They kind of see him as a second child, and I think if you love like Elsie Silver cowboy romances, you would really like this one. Rhett just kind of reminded me of the main characters from that series, and yeah, Olivia just doesn't want to sit around and do nothing, so she starts to get more involved in the town to keep herself occupied, and she's made it very clear to Rhett that nothing can happen between them because she is not going to stay in this small town and she is going to go back to her life in California, and he just really wants to try and convince her to stay. There were parts of this that I didn't really like, hence why it wasn't a 5-star. Olivia, her parents just loved her so much and would do anything for her, and it's not a spoiler, but she pushes them away quite a lot. I don't know, I don't really see why she did that. Other than that, it was a really good story. Then I read Midnight with the Devil by Emma Castle, and I gave this 4.5 stars. In this we have Diana, and at the start of the book her father is in hospital and he is on his deathbed, and when she goes down to the chapel in the church, she meets the devil, offers her a deal that if she becomes his for every Friday night for a couple of weeks, then he will basically heal her dad. She agrees because she wants to be able to save her father, and she just thinks it's one night a week for a couple of weeks and then I never have to see this guy again. As the weeks go by, she slowly kind of gives in. This is very spicy. He teaches her a lot, so if you like that as a trope, definitely check this one out. The ending I wasn't expecting, and I just thought it wrapped it all up really nicely, and this wasn't a particularly long book either. Then I read Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stephen, and I gave this 4 stars. This was my local book club's pick for May, and I don't actually think anyone at book club really liked it. I think everyone gave it 3 stars, and that made me rethink my 4-star rating. But I did like it because it reminded me of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is my all-time favourite book, but I can see why people don't particularly like this one. So it is a young adult. We have Evelyn and Arden, and the story is told from multiple timelines, so the two of them basically reincarnate over thousands of years and live all of these different lives, but then on Evelyn's 18th birthday, Arden always kills her. And in the current timeline, her sister is living with cancer, and Evelyn is the only person who can help save her by doing a transplant, and she finds Arden and she basically has to try and stay past her 18th birthday alive so that she can complete the transplant so her sister can live. And yeah, it's told like the dual timelines. You have multiple chapters that are going back through their past lives, and then you have the current storyline of her trying to stay alive so that she can help her sister. I found the chapters from the past lives really interesting, especially to see how many different ways that the author could come up to kill off these characters was crazy, and they were really enjoyable. But the current day timeline was what kind of let it down a little bit for me. The whole story and plot was really interesting, and I did sit and read it quite quickly, and that was like the general consensus as well at book club, that it's a very easy read, but it could have been a bit more in depth. But yeah, my favourite part was definitely all of the kind of flashback chapters, seeing them through all of their lives. Then I read my favourite book of the month, and that was The Coven by Harper L. Woods. I gave this 5 stars. In The Coven we have Willow, and she is a witch, and she has been hidden from the community by her mother, but when her mother passes away, kind of all these enchantments are lifted. She is taken to Hollows Grove Academy by the head teacher, Alaric Grayson Thorne, I think his name was, but he goes by Gray. They have a bit of a thing, so it is forbidden because obviously she is a student and he is the head teacher. He was another morally grey male main character, which are my favourites. There was a lot going on in this, and as much as I loved it, I did find myself confused at some times, so I definitely do want to reread this to take it all in again, because I feel like there's bits I missed that left me confused. But this is definitely a book I think you should read around Halloween. It was really atmospheric. If you love witchy, age gap, vampire-y kind of romances, this is definitely one for you. Then I read Hawk by Kat Savage, and I gave this 3 stars. This was a single parent romance. I can't remember the female main character's name, but she applies for a job in this tattoo studio which is owned by Hawk, our male main character. It's really insta love. Her husband, ex-husband, and the father of her daughter has essentially just wanted a divorce, so they've had to move out. They've got this tiny apartment and she's really just trying to do the best that she can to support herself and her daughter. And when she gets this job at the tattoo shop, they all kind of become a family with all of the other staff members. Hawk and the female main character have a thing. The third act breakup was kind of predictable and it was just way too insta-lovey for me, and this had been a book that had been on my TBR for years, so I was really excited to finally get to it, but I just thought I was gonna love it a lot more than I did. Then I read my second arc of the month, which was Not So Fast by Karen Booth, and I gave this 3.5 stars. So this is a F1 romance. So we have Xander, who is an F1 driver, and Mia, who runs a podcast talking about F1, and she has a lot of strong opinions about Xander, and this kind of goes viral. So Xander's teammate, who is kind of his rival, invites Mia to this conference and to the race weekend because he thinks it will rattle Xander by having her there, and they end up meeting. My favourite thing about this book was definitely the character of Xander. He was really sweet and this was a really fluffy romance, but honestly I just did not like the character of Mia. Like, she would get on this podcast and just rant about Xander, which people loved, and I understand her continuing to do it as it was her livelihood and it was getting popular, but I felt she was very selfish, and there were these people who started like a fan club for her podcast and she was really rude about them, and then when they finally turned around and decided that actually they didn't want anything to do with her anymore, she was really offended, but she treated them really badly, and it just felt all she cared about was her podcast and not her family, her friends, Xander. Like, she was just very self-centered, and it ruined it because it had so much potential, and like I said, I really liked the male main character. But yeah, the female main character just ruined it for me. So then I read my third and last arc of the month, and that was Heartbreaker by Annika Hussein, and I gave this 5 stars. So this is a young adult romance, and it really reminded me of the Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging books and movies. So if you loved that as a teenager, definitely look into this one. But in this one, our female main character has this little friendship group, and her best friend has been left heartbroken by this guy, and he has a bit of a reputation for kind of just going around kissing girls. They fall in love with him and he never wants anything more. So her and her friends decide to come up with this plan to get the guy to fall in love with her, and then she is going to dump him and leave him heartbroken as revenge for him doing that to her best friend. But she doesn't anticipate that she is actually going to end up falling for him herself. I thought the character development through this was so great. I loved how strong the themes of friendship were in this. It was just such a cute YA, and I literally read this within a day. I could not put it down. Then I read Wolf's Awakening by Ava Blake, and I gave this 3 stars. This is a reverse harem wolf shifter romance. We have Ellie, and at the start of her book her grandmother passes away, and Ellie is left with her grandmother's business, which is a bookshop slash tea room and this old house in this small town. So she leaves everything behind. She doesn't have much going for her where she's from, and she arrives in this small town and people are kind of shifty. Slowly she starts to meet these 3 guys, and the first one, Hunter, she doesn't have the greatest impression of him. She's just heard lots of rumours about this town being a bit weird. Then she finds out that her grandmother was keeping a secret, and she is actually from a family of wolf shifters, and the 3 guys that she has met around town are actually her mates. This was another one that I did like the concept of, but there just wasn't enough depth for me. Like, one minute she didn't really like the guys, and then the next minute she just kind of accepted everything, and it just felt like it could have been a bit deeper. The characters could have connected and engaged a bit more before diving right in. This is part of a series and I don't think I will be continuing it. Then I had a buddy read for the month, and that was Fake Dates and Mooncakes by Shirley. I gave it 3 stars, and my friend that I was reading it with also gave it 3 stars. I was really sad about this one. It was an anticipated 5-star. We've both had this book on our shelves for over 2 years, and We wanted to do a buddy read in May and we couldn't decide what it was, so we put all of our options on a spinner wheel and it landed on this, and we thought, great, it's going to be 5 stars. But we both had the exact same feelings about this one. So it is a young adult male romance, and the two boys are complete opposites. So one is poor and one is rich. I know one of them was called Dylan, but I can't remember whether he was the rich one or the poor one. But basically the one who was poor, his family are in some financial difficulties, and there is this mooncake competition, and the prize winner gets featured on this television show, and it is basically really helped all of the past winners. So he decides to enter this to try and raise money to help out his aunt's struggling Chinese takeaway restaurant. And I thought that this story was going to be the two boys working together or maybe being rivals in this contest, and that's where the fake dating came in. But actually it was all mostly based around a wedding, and they fake date to a wedding, and they just have these two very different backgrounds, and it's quite hard for them. Yeah, I don't know if I just didn't enjoy it because it wasn't what I expected it to be. I think this was the author's debut book as well, and I would like to try something else by this author because I think this story had a lot of potential. It was just kind of one where not a lot was happening to keep me invested in the characters. Like, I liked the story, I don't know, I've been in a slump, so I don't necessarily know if that is to do with why I didn't enjoy it. But when me and my friend were discussing this, we both kind of felt that something was missing, and I know we're probably not the target audience with it being a young adult male romance, but we have read other young adult male romances that we have absolutely loved, so I think we were hoping that this was going to be on the same level, and it just wasn't quite there. Then I read Bash by Casey Mills, and this is a motorcycle club romance. We have Bash, our male main character, and Cambry, who is the female main character, and she is a single mom to a 3-year-old girl. So Cambry initially applies to work as a dancer, but when Bash sees her, he doesn't want her up there dancing for anyone else. So he offers her a job at the bar that's at this club, as she can still make decent money, but then no one else will be able to see her dancing. He just is instantly falls for her, but as she's a single mom, he doesn't really want to go there. There's a whole backstory as to why he avoids dating single mums. And the father of Cambry's child just isn't really there. Again, I don't really know how to describe what happened in this book. I just really liked it. I think it is part of a series, and if it is, I'm definitely going to continue it. I really liked all of the characters in this. I thought it was really well written, the story was interesting, and I think it's definitely one of the best single parent romances that I have ever read. Then I ended the month with Bubble, Toil and Cuddle. This is a YA romance, and I saw it being talked about somewhere that it was basically Harry Potter. Obviously there's a lot going on with the Harry Potter series and the author, so if you want something with a Harry Potter vibe but without having to put any money into the Harry Potter fandom or supporting that, this could be a good alternative for you. So this first book is very young adult, and it really did remind me of Harry Potter, but I'm pretty sure when I was reading up about the series, as the series goes on, they do get spicy and darker, but I'm not too sure how many books into the series you have to read before that happens. But yeah, honestly, it just reminded me of Hogwarts. We have the female main character, and she's in the storm with her friends. So the male main character, the previous year he was like the coolest kid in the school, and then his family were found to actually be secretly aiding this bad guy, and he just plummeted in popularity and everyone's avoiding him. No one liked him anymore, but the female main character does always make an effort to like say hello and stick up for him, but he is always really rude to her because he thinks that her mother was in on his family getting caught or whatever. But then they kind of form this unlikely friendship, as her mother has tasked her to find something and he has been trying to find it as well. So they work together to find this object. I was not seeing the twist at the end coming, and I think it was really interesting, and I'm really intrigued to see how the story changes as it ages up, with them adding in spice and things. Like, I'm not in a particular rush to read it, but I just think it was a really interesting alternative if you want the Harry Potter vibe. but not having to support the fandom. Hey, so those were all of the books that I read in May. Let me know if you've read any of these and what was your favourite book that you read. I feel I'm just so awful at these wrap-ups because by the time I get around to filming them, I've honestly forgotten the most of what's happened in any of the books, but they're really fun to watch and I enjoy making them. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you again next week.